by Samantha Harvey, winner of the 2024 Booker Prize, an award which I must confess I find utterly bewildering. So, this is a book to describe which I don't think I could rightly use the term science fiction. Rather, I think I would describe this book as being fiction about science. There really is nothing technologically futuristic about this book. There's really nothing in this book that doesn't exist at present. The story of Orbital, what story there is, follows six, I think, and the fact that I have to think about that should tell you something. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station over the course of, again, I think, 24 hours as they orbit the Earth. And that's it. That is the extent of the story which Orbital tells. Most of this book consists of excessive, like masturbatory descriptions of Earth from the view from space, as well as kind of peripheral meditations on climate change and the human condition. So let's break this book down by, its component attributes. Let's start off with the writing. That is probably the strongest aspect to Orbital. The prose in this is pleasing at times. It's not the best I've ever read, but it is notable at times. Like there is some genuine poetic description in this. It is kind of lofty in a way, and again, the writing, while not again the best that I've ever read, it is probably the most striking aspect of this book, and probably the most positive aspect of this book. So the writing, it's pretty good. Again, not the best I've ever read, but it is commendable in some ways. So yeah. Now on to the characters, because this is where things start to fall apart. The characters in this book are nothing more than names. Like, I struggle to even recall those names now because of how thin and undeveloped these characters are. So I'm not even going to refer to any of them because I don't even remember all of them, I think. It's just six astronauts on the International Space Station observing the Earth as they orbit it. And yeah, there's some kind of like attempts on occasion to provide something approaching characterization to these names, but it is far too little to actually accomplish anything. The characters are horrendous, to be honest, in this book. There's nothing to latch on to, there's nothing to invest in. They're just names. They are nothing more than names. So, moving on from that, let's talk about the story of this book, because it's kind of like Moby Dick, right? You know, Moby Dick is a book, like a very long book, whose actual story only occupies like a fraction of that book. The rest of the book just consists of like facts about whales and like tangential speculations and diatribes about whatever. And Orbital is kind of like that, except it is nowhere near being in the league as Moby Dick. The actual story of this book, which is just some astronauts orbiting Earth, is like buried within just mountains of description of the Earth. Very lavish, again, kind of just excessive description of the Earth, as well as kind of, again, peripheral meditations on like climate change as the astronauts observe this like typhoon, and it talks about how storms have become more severe and frequent in recent years due to changes in weather pattern, and It kind of muses on what humans have done to the planet, in a a kind of lament for Mother Earth, if you will. Um, and there's also just kind of lots of waxing poetic about the place of humanity in a universe of which they may possibly be the only inhabitants, and how it feels very much like some kind of dorm room bull session. When you hit that doobie, right, and you're like, we're all just dust in the wind, man. It's kind of like that. It feels like it wants to be deep and profound, but it is not. It is about as deep as a mud puddle, and I think I've experienced more profundity reading the back of a cereal box. I think it doesn't have much depth really, and it feels very juvenile kind of in the way that it wants to pontificate about things, but not really, because it doesn't really go into anything. It just like throws out a bunch of crap to try to like mask the fact that it's saying nothing. Um, so if you haven't picked up on it yet, I did not think very highly of this book. I thought it was pointless. It's a book which I truly have to say I found pointless. It's not the worst thing I've ever read. Again, the writing is at times remarkable. Still not the best I've ever read, but I mean, there is some kind of flair here with the prose, which I will acknowledge. But other than that, there's really not much here that I can say I really dug into or enjoyed. Um, and like, so much of this book just feels like missed opportunity, because there's so much that you could have done with this, which Samantha Harvey chose not to do, apparently. Like, one of the astronauts on the space station is a Christian who believes in like intelligent design and like a creator and everything. And then the other astronauts like aren't. They're like agnostics or atheists, and like there was such fertile soil there for some kind of dialogue, of two sides propounding their differing views, and like kind of um, you know exploring their differences and having a kind of dialectic here, if you will. But I mean, that wouldn't have by any means been something that we probably haven't seen umpteen times before, but it would have at least been something. But no, again, there's just like brief mentions of these characters' backgrounds. Like, again, the Christian astronaut is described as being Christian, wearing a crucifix necklace, and then that's pretty much it. It just doesn't do anything with that. And likewise, this is the International Space Station, and there are a couple of Russian astronauts on here. And given the fact, especially given when this book was written, which I think this book was published in 2023. I guess it would have to be to win the Booker Prize in 2024. But given when this book came out, the relationship between Russia and the West is kind of touchy, you might say. And there could have been a great opportunity for a kind of cultural dialogue here of these characters who are, confined with each other in a very restrictive space, who have to work with each other. You could have done something with that and kind of, explored some differences in culture and stuff, but no, just no. What we get is instead, again, just copious description of the Earth. And it's a lot of it's just like done over and over, because as they orbit the Earth, obviously they go over like the same. I mean, they go over the same territory, right? And so it just kind of describes the same thing over and over and over. And then there's again that kind of dorm room bull session type philosophizing where they remark upon the insignificance of their own paltry little lives in the face of the vastness of space and blah blah blah. It feels like it again, like it wants to be deep, but it's not. It's not saying anything. It's just like tossing out a bunch of bullshit and like masking its um, vapidness with pretensions, I would say. I didn't like this book. I didn't like this book. I thought it was an utter waste of time, and it baffles me as to how this won the Booker Prize. I don't really pay attention to literary awards all that much. Maybe like the Pulitzer on occasion, I will see, what won that. The National Book Award, I do generally kind of like to, you know, check out every now and then at least. But the Booker Prize, I've never really been interested in whatever books have won that, and this does very little to change that for me because um, this I don't think this has any hallmark features of good literature. It has some decent writing. It has characters who are like tissue paper thin, just again, just names. It has a total absence of plot or any kind of narrative direction. It's just nothing. Like it's just nothing. There's just nothing to this. And not only did it win the Booker Prize, but on the back of the book here it says winner of the Hawthornden Prize. I don't really know what that is. And shortlisted for the Orwell Prize for political fiction. I don't even think this qualifies as political fiction unless you're counting like the climate change musings as political, maybe. And the Ursula K. Le Guin Prize for Fiction. I'm assuming that is a science fiction prize, but again, this is not really science fiction. There's nothing futuristic about this book. There's nothing in this book that doesn't exist in the real world at present. It's not really, strictly speaking, science fiction. So I don't know what the hell the judges of all these prizes were smoking, but I want some because if it can make Orbital look like some kind of landmark, uh, generation defining work, that's got to be some good drugs there because this book is not. It is, again, occasionally pretty to read, but that's it. There's nothing intellectual about this book that has any actual depth. I mean, again, it just kind of throws out like we're so small and space is so big. That's about the extent of its profundity, and similarly, it has no depth as regards its character. So there's no like emotional experience here whatsoever. It's just a hollow shell of a book which contains virtually nothing of substance, and I didn't like I felt like it wasted my time, and that's probably the worst thing that a book can do. Even if I come away from a book disliking it, if it's at least interesting, I can at least tip my hat to that. Like reading a book by like Richard Lehman where it's just like the lowest, most depraved, seedy kind of literary experience you can have, you can at least marvel at the depravity and the seediness of it, and you can kind of acknowledge that. There's not even that with this. It's just nothing. It's just a big question mark as to why this was even written. Like, what did this book even accomplish? I don't know. I can't answer that question because I just don't really think there's much to this book at all. So to rate Orbital by Samantha Harvey, if I'm going to be generous with this book, I would give this a C minus. Like it would just barely squeak into the C minus territory. But if I'm being honest, it's probably more close to like a D plus. Like I guess I'll just leave it there. It could either be a D plus and probably should be a D plus, or again, if I want to be generous, I might give it a C minus. Depends on my attitude. Depends on the mood I'm in. But it's not a very good book. And once again, how it won the Booker Prize and these other awards that it was nominated for and or won, hell if I know. But I will say this: I was not really familiar with Samantha Harvey when I picked this book up. So I looked her up, and on her Wikipedia page, it says that she teaches uh, for the Arvon Foundation, which I didn't know what that was either. But after clicking on that hyperlink, I found that is some kind of creative writing foundation in England. And after I read that, it all made sense because this is a book that reeks of too many creative writing classes. It is all flash, no substance. That's what this book is. So it's everything kind of clicked after I read that little factoid because it made this book make more sense. But anyway, so Orbital by Samantha Harvey. Have you read it? If you have, let me know down in the comments what you thought about it, whether you have agreed or disagreed with what I've said about it here today. And if you haven't read Orbital, I wouldn't recommend this. I think it's a waste of time. I think it's a waste of paper. I think it is hollow intellectually and emotionally. It offers, again, virtually no substance, I would say. It's also just incredibly boring. But again, unlike Moby Dick, there's no payout for slogging through the boredom. It's just an absolutely hollow literary experience. And yeah, so I would recommend it. But as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.